Alright, so today I'm going to talk about something you may have not even known existed, and that is a wild-caught ball python, otherwise known as an African import. And you may be thinking, why in the world would you go out in the wild and catch ball pythons and sell them in the pet trade? It's kind of crazy, especially if you think about all the breeders that are producing thousands or tens of thousands of ball pythons for the pet industry. Why would we go out and actually catch some in the wild and sell? And I would say the number one reason that most people are selling wild-caught ball pythons is they're looking for the next new morph to introduce into the ball python scene. And as a matter of fact, that's where everything came from. So originally what it was is these exporters would basically catch all these wild ball pythons, and then people would sort through them, look for something unique and interesting, and if they found something, especially at the height of the ball python craze, they would sell for tens of thousands of dollars. And let me tell you, you are gambling big time that these little mutations, the little color and pattern changes were genetic. And I would say probably 99% of the time they were not genetic. So you'd buy something like a yellow ball python thinking you have like a pastel or something like that. You'd breed it and none of the offspring would turn out yellow, or basically would copy that color and pattern to the offspring. So it wasn't genetic, it's just a one-time thing. And if you paid big money, you lost big money. And that's kind of how it was at the beginning of the ball python craze. And here, all these years later, it's been what, 20 plus years, now that we have so many morphs, we have like over 300 different morphs, and you can get in at any level, starting with, the cheaper single gene morphs all the way up into some of the really rare stuff. You can still pay, $10, $20, $30,000 to get into some of these projects, and you can pick them up as low as, $50, $100. So there's a whole range of stuff you can get into, and a lot of people, they used to gamble quite a bit on the African imports, hoping something would turn out from their breeding. And I think it's not really as popular as it used to be because there's just so much to choose from, but there's still kind of a select few that choose to go after the African imports. And let me tell you, it can turn out really big. As a matter of fact, if you look at all the morphs that we have in the industry today, essentially where they all came from were the wild-caught ball pythons. And can you imagine just looking through your snakes that you caught in the wild and just kind of stumbling on a coral glow or something like that? It's pretty amazing just to think, that the pies and the spiders and all that stuff were actually found in the wild, before we actually started breeding them here. So it's kind of interesting. They've been, they're still finding stuff. There's new stuff coming to the market all the time. So if you want to gamble on something new and you see something, pretty interesting in an African import, I would say you can roll the dice and take a chance. And there's a few places you can get an African import. You can actually be an importer, which is a little bit tricky. I've heard if you don't actually know people in West Africa, there's a high probability that you can get scammed out of your money. So you really want to know, you have some connections in West Africa, or know someone who knows someone, or as a matter of fact, you could probably fly out there, meet the people, and do it that way. And I've actually seen someone import the ball pythons from West Africa by the box load. And essentially what it is they ship it by plane, and it comes in this huge wooden box, which is pretty incredible. And essentially in the wooden box, the ones I've seen have this like a pole in the top center of the box, and then they have all these snake bags tied to the pole. So in every snake bag they'll have like 6 ball pythons, and they'll have just bags and bags and bags all piled up in there. It's kind of interesting how they box them and ship them. But you'd have to spend a lot of money, mainly not only the snakes and the packaging and everything, but also in the shipping it all the way from Africa. And really, I think you're taking a chance if you import some of these as far as getting diseases, or, have some die in transit, which I've seen it's pretty common. You lose a few in transit. So what I would recommend is actually going to kind of an import-export kind of a person, someone who brings the ball pythons into like here in the United States. I've actually seen some companies where they'll bring them in by the hundreds, and then they'll kind of go through them and offer them by sale sale individually. And that's really what you want, because they have a chance to eat and to feed, and you know, they kind of have a chance to clean them from all the parasites and the mites and everything, and clean them up, you know, before you actually get them. You're not taking quite a chance on some of these ball pythons. So what I want to do today is I want to show you just real quick on Morph Market, you know, some of these ball pythons. I've actually seen some for sale, and I kind of wanted to give you a quick tour of Morph Market and show you what's available and kind of what I'm thinking as far as, you know, looking for the next new project in ball pythons. All right, so I'm over here at morphmarket.com, and essentially what I did is I went into the filters and I sorted by import. You can see right there it says import, and that's essentially where you put your gene, like pastel or pinstripe. And import really isn't a gene per se, it's really a type of snake. These snakes have been imported from Africa, and that's why they're listed as imports. And if you kind of scroll through, so essentially what I did on this one is I sorted by only the ones that are for sale. And you can see there's only 16. This is 1 through 16. There's only 16 imports for sale on Morph Market right now. So not a whole lot of demand, I would say. You know, if the demand is higher, I would say there'd probably be hundreds on here. But if you can kind of look through and you see people are kind of showing off the bellies. You can see over here they're showing off the belly. You think, yeah, maybe there's something there. This one, maybe it looks kind of like maybe there's some kind of tracks for het pied. Doesn't really look clearly het pied. Looks like there might be a little bit of flaming here, but I'm not convinced this is not just another normal. And a lot of times, you know, for a price of this, for this one, for example, the price is 100 with shipping up to 55. So you're spending $155 on a snake that potentially could be just another normal. So that's, you know, pretty high for just a normal. So you really have to kind of have a keen eye as far as what you're looking for. For example, this one over here, it looks like it's a little bit promising. This one is, you know, has a description, very axanthic looking, no yellows or oranges, predominantly browns and blacks. So I would probably lean, you know, towards something like this. This one's actually 85 plus up to 65 shipping. So, you know, it really depends on what you're willing to gamble. I've seen some of these go up to like $300-400, and some of them, you know, I've actually seen people spend thousands on some of these imports, breed them over and over and over, and not really prove them out. They just produce whole batches of normals. So what I did over here on this tab is I sorted by the ones that are sold and the ones for sale. So a total of only 86 imports on Morph Market, which kind of surprised me. I thought there would be more African imports over here on Morph Market. But the interesting thing is if you're looking for an import and maybe you don't see anything here on Morph Market, what you can actually do is look at the people who are selling it. So for example, this is Luna Morphs. Here you have Hercules Herps. Here you have Freedom Breeder. So for example, you know, you look over here at this one, and this is an African import, and I say, you know, Freedom Breeder doesn't really have anything that's really interesting. They all look like normals to me. It doesn't look like there's anything in there. What I would actually do is I'd actually contact Freedom Breeder, see if they have anything maybe higher end that came in with the shipment, something they're holding back. Maybe they changed their mind, they're willing to sell it. Or if they're getting another shipment, maybe you can have the first pick. Or if you're really adventurous, maybe you can figure out where they're getting their ball pythons from and order them in 100 at a time. You know, the problem is with African imports, you know, if you're taking a chance and you're breeding two of these together, you think there might be something in there. Most of the times there's not. And essentially what you're doing is you're breeding a normal to a normal. You get a whole clutch of normals. And let me tell you, if you're breeding a whole rack of normals, getting all normals, you probably are going to have a tough time paying for your food and your bedding and your equipment, and it probably won't cover your time. Your time is definitely won't be covered from breeding normals. So, you know, you have a high potential of hitting something that could be new and could take off, and, you know, you could name it after yourself or your company or whatever, and it would be really cool. But, you know, there's a lot of people that spend a lot of money on these and end up really not going anywhere. I've seen people spend thousands of dollars on some of these imports and pretty much not make anything back because, you know, the little things that they're looking at are typically not genetic. Alright, so I have to admit that here in my collection, I actually don't have any wild-caught African import ball pythons. I pretty much stick with the bread and butter stuff, the stuff that I know I can pair up, and it gives reproducible results year after year, and I can advance my collection that way. But let me tell you, if you want to be in the forefront, on the leading edge of the new stuff that's coming out in ball pythons, you want to really be looking at the wild-caught African imports. As a matter of fact, when I first started in ball pythons, the scaleless head was just coming out. It was really hot on the market, and those snakes were selling like for $45,000 a piece. It was pretty incredible. As a matter of fact, that snake came from an African import. It was actually Brian Barczyk over at BHB. He was getting some imports from West Africa, and right at the last minute, so the story goes, the guy that was boxing up the snake said, "Hey, we have the snake, has a few scales missing from the head. You want us to throw it in the box?" Sure enough, it came over here. When he bred it, half the babies had scales missing from their head, and then when he bred two scaleless heads together, he got the very first totally scaleless ball python. As a matter of fact, he was offered $150,000 for that scaleless ball python, which, as far as I know, is the record for the most expensive ball python in history. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.